When you think about people on their deathbed at the end of their life or, whatever point in life that is, their number one regret is that they wasted their potential, that they could have made so much more out of life than what they did. And I didn't want to be one of those people.
Yeah.
So it was like at any cost.
Hello and welcome to Busy Pro Fast Wellness. It's a pleasure to introduce Stephanie Dunne to the show. Stephanie is an aligned success advocate, and we're going to explore what that really means in today's world. So welcome to the show, Stephanie, and thanks so much for taking time out to join me today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here, excited to have the conversation and bring a little bit of insight.
Absolutely fantastic. Before we actually dive into the deeper questions, I'm really genuinely intrigued. An aligned success advocate. Now that's such a compelling title. What does aligned success mean, and how did your journey lead you there in the first place?
Sure. So aligned success for me is when my life, my work, and how I'm wired are all finally having the same conversation, right? So when we look back at, let's just look at society as a whole. Really, society kind of defines success as you got to climb higher, you got to go faster, you got to outwork everybody, sacrifice everything to get where you want to be so that you can show everyone, a lot of times through social media or just in other ways, that you've made it. Aligned success is really knowing who you are, honoring how you're built, and contributing to the world from that place. So my journey specifically really goes with what you're talking about. I'll tell you, let me take you all the way back to when I was a child.
Okay.
Because when I was a kid, I was from what I hear, just a sweet kid that I could walk into a room and I could have a conversation with adults about just such meaningful topics. It seemed like I was an old soul. I just had so much optimism. And my mom used to say that I just floated through life like a butterfly. And, the road ahead of me just paved the way with every step I took. I just knew that everything in my life was going to work out for me. And as I got older, I really kind of started to shrink myself to the beliefs that other people put onto me. So,
Okay.
Every time that I walked into a room and I didn't speak up, or I sat and I observed more than I talked, I became that person that was just too quiet. Like, you're always way too quiet.
Right.
Different things like that. And over time, I just shrunk myself and shrunk myself and shrunk myself so much that I just started living by the narrative of everyone else around me. So when it came time for me to, pick my future, I was in high school and they said, "What is it that you're going to do with the rest of your life?" I said, "Well, I'll probably just go to college, I guess. Maybe I'll study marketing because that sounds kind of fun." And they said, okay, they checked the box and off I went.
Right.
That didn't pan out. I dropped out of college after the first semester. I didn't like school at all. And then, so at that point in time, I just went into the workforce. I saw what was going on around me. I saw the career options that I had. And I spent 17 years in the medical field and administration, clocking in and out at the exact same place, working my way up over time. But my whole life and method of operation became about sacrifice.
Right.
I never took the time to get to know my own innate abilities and what it was that I had to contribute to the world. I just contributed what I felt like was needed by other people. And unfortunately, a lot of the world operates that way. And I found myself, at only 37 years old, a lot of life left to live, and completely burn out.
Right. Okay. Now that's really interesting, that whole narrative that you've just come up with, because obviously you've gone on this incredible journey and it's like you've had that introspection from a very, very young age.
Yeah.
And it's almost like you were self-assessing because, as you say, when you were extremely young, you were just happy-go-lucky and your mother recognized all those qualities. And then as time went on, you found yourself becoming more insular, more inhibited, I guess, in that period.
Hmm.
And then having to sort of self-evaluate as you've gone further forward. So, I mean, that brings us really well into this idea that you speak about. You speak about the shift now from serving out of sacrifice to serving out of contribution. And
Yeah.
I mean, can you sort of explain that difference to someone who has gone through burnout, who's felt stressed, as you have obviously experienced? So you obviously speak from someone as someone who has that authority in that area, I guess.
Yeah. So, I think that some of those, I would say, red flags of just
Yeah,
things that we look at. They're not like there doesn't have to be some rock bottom defining moment, but what we often look at as normal. So if you're waking up every day or your alarm's going off and you're hitting snooze 10 times before you actually get out of bed, my hand is
yeah.
way up. I was like that for so long.
Mm,
I woke up every day and shuffled through the same morning routine. I was reactive to my kids because I felt stressed out all the time. My relationship with my husband was just, we were roommates. We just all kind of coexisted. I went to work every day, the same drive, clocking in, clocking out. I was always giving so much of myself to everyone else, I felt like.
yeah,
And I was always the one that was staying late for projects at work. And we need someone to pick up this extra hour. Can you be there? Absolutely. Because I was taught from a young age that it's such a great thing to be able to give to other people, right? So we think that on the inside, we're just kind of conditioned to know from a young age that service is the most noble thing that you can do is to serve others.
yeah,
But it's when we get to that point of every single day is just mundane
yeah,
over and over and over again, that's no longer serving, from who you are. That is really serving from sacrifice.
yeah.
That's where
Okay.
that feeling of just being burnt out and stuck. And so many people will tell you, unfortunately, that that's just the way that life is, that that's just how, we're all stressed out. Everybody's got stuff to deal with. But I can tell you, after making the shift from sacrifice into contribution,
Yeah,
that is not the case. As that quiet kid in high school that didn't speak up, it wasn't because I didn't have anything to say. I now am a speaker and a coach and consultant in
mm,
education and workforce development. I have a lot to say. I'm not
yeah,
quiet, but I operated from that place and I just fell in line and followed the rules because I was told for so long my voice didn't matter. So when you're finding yourself almost fighting back on, like, why do I believe that? Why am I operating this way? Why do I get to the end of every day and think, is what I'm doing even making a difference?
right.
That's how you know that you're in sacrifice mode.
Okay. That's, I mean, what you referred to now, it's obvious that there is somewhere down this line, there's a lack of alignment. You can feel that
Yes.
because obviously you went through that process and you saw that, and it's true. And you alluded to this at the very beginning of when you were speaking. It seems that our priorities, it seems like our goals are out of alignment because most people are conditioned to think, oh, I need to earn this amount of money. I need to have this amount of
Mhm.
success as they go through life. And that is their mission. And I've noticed that possibly it's even more prevalent in the United States than it is
Yeah.
in Europe. Because, I mean, we have the same the same sort of values as well. So it's not like I'm being very pious here or anything like that. But I've just
Mhm.
having American friends and the sort
Yeah.
of guiding questions they will ask me Well, so they want to know the measure of my success, and that measure, that barometer, is extremely different to what that barometer would be in France, where it's like you don't want to be talking about if you've had success. You don't want to be bragging about it. So you can see that sort of that's already, so that's an issue in itself. And I'm just curious because how is it possible to change that barometer, that reading, that sort of quest that so many people seem to have, so that they don't have that necessity to always strive to achieve what you and I know are kind of false dreams? Because, I mean, even if you can accumulate a masses of and have this wonderful life, you're always going to want more anyway. And so you know, it's like
always.
So how do you change that? That's I mean, that might bring in your high school students. I mean, planting the seeds with them or something.
So that's the big thing. Absolutely. Yeah. And I just talked to somebody about that today. I'm not here to tell them exactly what it is that they should do with their life. I'm there to plant the seed that they have a choice with what they do with their life and who they become.
Yeah.
So the kind of what I do when I work with them is a framework made up of just 3 parts. And that aligned success, my mission, how I accomplish that is discover, align, and activate. You can do this with yourself very easily. So the one thing, none of us know who we are at the root of who we are. Now, is that something that you can find in a textbook? Absolutely not. But you will, by taking different assessments, going back through your life and figuring out what your values are, not what anybody else says, really figuring out what's most important to you and figuring out from your experiences, who did you like? If you just say that you showed up at a certain event and you acted a certain way, you could probably think back on that event and think like, gosh, I really don't like who I was in that moment. Then that's not you. You know, so really figuring out sometimes who you're not is one of those easier ways to figure out who you are. We do with students different strength assessments and aptitude assessments, and really get them knowing. I was talking with someone today that a student of mine who had said on his aptitude assessment, he just has people tell him all the time that he's just not very friendly. Like, he's like, I'm not super outgoing and I don't know how to change that. And I said, you don't have to. That is an opinion of theirs that you are not super friendly. Friendly is irrelevant for a relative term. So what's friendly to one person might not be to somebody else, but he is a very matter of fact type of person. Yeah. I'm here to do a job. I need to get this done, and this done. And I'm not here to necessarily create relationships through that. So he's looking at careers in compliance. Like, I'm here to make sure that everybody else is following the rules. And I said, and one day when you get out of high school, you will see that little rigidity that you've got, that kind of stoic operation is going to serve you very well. You're not mean to people, but you've got a job to do and you're going to get it done. Whereas someone like me, I could never be in compliance because I'm just going to be like, it's okay. You're fine that you made that mistake, that you broke that law. No big deal. And not make waves about it. So that's, you know, when we are trying to figure out who we are, it's discovering who you are, not necessarily the opinions of other people, but how you operate and how you can best serve the world with that. And then aligning it. Again, when we're talking about careers, and this is with people in the current workforce, if you don't like what you're doing, I love to tell people all the time when they think like, oh, all of that sounds great. And yes, I should align who I am with what I'm doing, but that's easier said than done. I took a $60,000 pay cut last year. $60,000.
Wow.
The hardest thing I've ever done in my life. But you know what happened when I took that $60,000 pay cut is that I started waking up when my alarm first went off in the morning. I was
Yeah.
taking better care of myself. I was eating healthier. I had more
Yeah.
energy. I went to bed every night knowing that what I'm doing is making a difference. And
Yeah.
within 6 months, I am almost 75% of the way to that $60,000 that I cut in pay a year ago.
Yeah.
But I'm
Wow. Amazing.
happier. And
Of course.
every day does not seem like I'm just a zombie just walking through my
Yeah.
life. And that's kind of
Exactly.
that activate part is once you figure out who you are and you can align your actions and your values, activating yourself into your world, operating from that place. So again, I show up every day as this person who wants to make great connections with people. I show up as the future version of myself who is extremely successful. And that's not $1 million successful. That is successful in the sense that, again, I wake up every day looking forward to the day ahead, knowing that there's going to be challenges, knowing
Yeah.
that I might make somebody mad, knowing that great
Yeah.
things are going to happen and maybe not so great things. But I deal with everything head on in a much more calm manner. I don't stress about things
Yeah.
because I know that I'm operating from the place that I'm supposed to be. And I'm just kind of back to that, the road just paves the way as I go. And I can
Brilliant.
optimistically say that life isn't perfect, every day isn't perfect, every relationship isn't perfect. But I'm happy to work through the challenges. And that's when you know that you're operating from alignment and you've activated that part of you that is meant to be here.
Gosh, that's such a lovely story that you've just presented at the moment, and you obviously felt these things very much, having sacrificed in your own mind. I mean, and on a financial level, purely on a financial level, and then gone through this this shift mentally, and felt a lot more fulfillment as a result of doing all of that. And I can really relate to that, because ever since doing this podcast, it's
Okay.
exactly the same thing for me. I have sieved money doing this, but it doesn't matter. I mean, I'm not in it. I mean, obviously later on, much further down the line, if money were to come, some sort of financial remuneration, that's brilliant. But it's not the point. The point is that I'm doing this for me, and then to pass on everything that I learn to other people. So that is, I guess, that sense of service. So I can really relate to what you're saying on every
right, serving.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you've summed it up a lot better than I would have done, because you've got your own sort of your own framework that you've analysed and you've put into place, and it seems to work. But I love the whole story of that mental shift from that point where you were just living in a rut, and then you've obviously made that transformation to where you are at the moment, regardless of what the financial rewards would be, because that's not the point. The point is about living, not just going through the motions,
absolutely,
which so many of us do constantly, and it's just, we've got such a little time on this earth. Our life is ridiculously short, so therefore we do need to think about community, about service, and all of those types of things in order to fulfill our own lives in the process. So that's lovely that you've said that as well. Thank you very much for sharing your journey.
Absolutely.
There's something else which I'd like to ask you. You've said that we're often not stressed because we're doing too much. But because we're doing too little. And so that could cause the stress of what we're meant to do. Could you expand on that a little bit? Because I didn't really entirely understand that concept.
Yeah. So I think, when we hear a lot of people will say that a lot of times, like, I'm so stressed because I just have too much on my plate. It's just too much of everything except what you're meant for is the problem. When you really look back at it, you are constantly... Most people are working completely against their wiring every single day. So when we
Okay.
live from that place of needing everybody else's permission and approval to, am I doing this right? Am I doing enough? When you live in alignment, you don't need that validation from everybody else because you know who you are. You know you're contributing
Yeah.
in the way that you're meant to contribute. So, when people say that they have too much on their plate, and I will tell you, I'm, obviously independently running my own business. I'm working at a school. I'm speaking and doing workshops. Also, if I can speak, I'm also a soccer coach and I lead a Girl Scout troop.
Okay.
And I have
Oh,
things
wow.
on my plate too, but I don't say yes to things that I know are not going to also bring me fulfillment in the end. Because if I don't have my tank refilled, I can't give the best of myself in all of the roles that people need the best of me in. So, and
Yeah.
again, you don't know what those things are or what you should say yes to or what you should say no to if you don't know yourself. So that's why,
Right.
again, that
Okay.
discovery piece is so huge. Because otherwise, then you're trying to do everything to make everybody else happy. Um, so
Yeah.
yeah, it's, somebody who's completely misaligned is someone who is stressed out, constantly working and operating against who they're meant to be. And that's
Yeah.
just, you're not bringing anything to anyone else in that. I hear a lot of people will say, like, I feel like I'm just giving little pieces of myself away all the time. And that's the problem, really, is you really should be able to give the best of yourself in almost every situation. And I hate to say in every single
Yeah.
situation because we all get, if we have your car breaks down on the side of the road and it's raining and you don't know how to change a tire, that's a stressful situation. That's normal.
Yeah, of
So
course.
100% of your days are not going to be perfect, but at the same time, just knowing that the challenges will take care of themselves, when you're
Yeah.
operating from a different place.
Yeah, exactly. So you have that grounding, you have that base anyway, because you already are aware, you've already discovered who you are, and you are aware that you're not perfect, and there's no such thing
Yeah.
as leading this perfect, idyllic life. We are going to feel
Hmm.
those moments of stress, but I suppose it's how you deal with those moments, and you are much more aware because you know that it's best to be proactive and to be aware at the beginning that these things that there's
Right.
going to be mishaps. There's no such thing as going through life in a perfect rose tinted way. So yeah, that's really good. And also you obviously you work really
Right.
closely with high school students.
Yeah.
So what do you think today's overwhelmed professionals could learn from how you coach them, the supposed, well, the next generation?
Yeah, so when I talk with high school students now, I don't know that any of them are super thrilled about becoming adults. And I guess we kind of have to look in the mirror on some of that to see, when they look at their parents and their parents are coming home stressed out from work and doing all of the things, all of the activities, and they're just kind of scrolling through social media for a
Yeah, of
couple
course.
hours and we'll make dinner. Maybe I'll have a few drinks, couple glasses of wine because I need that to de-stress.
Yeah.
Um, it makes adulthood seem just unbearable.
Yeah,
Like they're not thrilled to get out into the workforce and to have to figure it all out.
of course.
So, again, coaching them just on that idea of contribution, because everyone goes through circumstances in life that are hard, and their parents aren't perfect people either. But the problem is that we kind of conform to mediocrity because we see it all around us.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to get these kids to do is to operate a little bit differently. If
Yeah.
you want different, you have to do different.
Yeah.
So the problem is that high school or school in general is not great at teaching kids, their strengths and what it is that they're good at and what drains them, and, you know, what puts that fire under them. What do they absolutely love to do? We've kind of gotten into, you know, it's just a system of checking boxes and making sure all the tests are passed. And as long as you get that high school diploma, we've done our job. The problem then is when these kids get into the workforce or the ones that go to college. You know, in the United States, the average 4-year degree takes about 6 years or more to complete because students change their major 1 to 3 times on average.
Wow.
So it extends the student debt that they have because they're going out with nothing but hope and just saying, cross my fingers, I hope this is what I'm supposed to do.
Right.
I hope I'm good at it. I hope I love it. And then, you know, once they get out into that real world and they see, wait, I don't love that career. I don't want to do this every day. So we're kind of planting that seed to get some of that career exploration based on their abilities and their interest and all of that a little bit sooner. And really kind of finding that balanced marriage between education and workforce, because you know, you look at students now and a lot of them just kind of seem disengaged and like they don't care. But the conversations that I'm having with them is they care very much. They just don't have anyone who is willing to listen to some of their concerns and what they want to do differently. And every time they kind of say, like, oh, I want to have this career that I'm really excited about, their parents are like, okay, I mean, you're going to be stressed out. It's adult, you know, wait until you get into it. Wait until you really see what it's like.
Right.
And then what kind of mindset does that put them in? As if, well, this is the inevitable. Why even try? We'll just shoot the arrow and see where it lands. So again, for them to plant that seed early on to say, we need to operate differently if we want our workforce to operate differently. You know, these kids want to be coached. They don't want to be told. They don't want to be micromanaged. Their strengths need to come out.
Yeah.
And I think we can really empower the workforce in a great way if we can do that early on.
Brilliant. From what you've just said, it would seem that perhaps the system is broken in terms of the education. I mean, is that a fair comment to make? That teachers who go into teaching in a high school situation, possibly they're not equipped with the right tools in order to engage the students, or no, it's not, maybe not that. It's more that they are pushed because they have to hit those sort of targets on the academic levels, and they have to tick the boxes, as you say. So there seems to be some sort of disalignment between what the teachers are told to do and maybe what they would like to do, because obviously they have their own objectives, their own stresses in order to get the students up to a certain academic level, which seems to be counterproductive, really, because if they are trying to do that, then the students aren't really going through that growth themselves, because it's really about people at a young age understanding themselves, as you've already mentioned, in order for them to grow. If they haven't got that in the beginning. So obviously people like you who are coaches, you're coming in, that will be like an extracurricular sense. You'll be coaching them outside of the school in order for them to understand more. Do you have any real contact with the teachers? Do you discuss this with the teachers? Or is it just broken, the system? It's really interesting for me to know how that would work.
Yeah. So we're starting to have those conversations a little bit more. So
okay.
It is not kind of what I do is not meant in any way to make it seem as if what the teachers are doing is irrelevant, that their work is not important. Because it is very much so. And people will tell you they go into education because they want things to be a little bit different, or that they want to really support these kids to be successful in life. That is their individual mission.
Yeah.
Again, is to serve, but they are put into kind of a system where they don't necessarily get to make all of their own rules. They are, there to make sure that the structure of the day is followed the way that it's meant to be followed by administration. And above administration, you've got, our individual states or federal government that are saying what has to be done. This is how much money you have. These are the resources that you get. So their hands are tied a little bit on some of that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
it is definitely not the teachers themselves. And I would even say, some of those administrators and stuff too, they want to see things done a little bit differently. What I do is to be able to come in and kind of bridge that gap. And for one,
Okay.
support teachers to be able to integrate career exploration into their classroom. So when they have a
Right.
certain curriculum that they have to follow, how can we take a local business or organization leader and bring them into the classroom and maybe do a workshop with the kids, something interactive that gets them understanding, okay, if this is what we're learning in school, how could I potentially take this into the workforce? And again, some of those math classes, I was terrible at math. I'm still terrible at math. Some of those math classes, you don't see exactly how that might integrate in. And just because you're required to take a math class, that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to go into accounting. But could we have an accountant come in and say, these are all the number of careers that you could potentially do
Yeah.
with this? If math is something that you enjoy, why don't you come and job shadow for a day? Or why don't
Okay.
we bring in to do kind of some hands-on learning? So we're really, again, just kind of that marriage between education and workforce and getting the businesses to support the kids a little bit more, because at the end of the day, that's their future workforce that's
Yeah,
sitting in the
of course.
classroom right now. Those
Yeah.
are the kids that are going to be coming here soon, whether they have to wait for a 2-year, 4-year degree, or they're just going straight into it.
Yeah.
That's their future workforce. So,
Okay. Thank you. You've really
yeah.
you've clarified everything for me, because I was wondering, obviously it was a two-part question in my mind. I was trying to gain more knowledge about your role as well.
Yeah.
And that you've really, really clarified that. And also, obviously, I realised the value of teachers. That's that, and I was trying to be very diplomatic in my questioning in order
Right.
to elicit
Right.
that answer. But it obviously sometimes I think it's particularly difficult for teachers. They are in a situation where I'm sure many of them would like to be able to help more, but they are obviously restricted. They can be restricted because of their own objectives within the classroom. So it's, what you're doing and bridging that gap, as you say, seems like a very, very worthwhile and valuable role. So brilliant,
Yeah.
There is another question I'd like to ask. It's about many,
Sure.
many of the listeners. They'll feel a bit off, in their career. And I'm not saying miserable, but rather they would feel not fulfilled. So
Yeah.
or if you have one, simple exercise or reflection they could try in order to reconnect with who they are. Do you have anything on that that you can help?
Really, the basis of that, I think there's a simple exercise that I still go through myself throughout my day, that if you want to kind of start to get a sense of whether you are really operating from sacrifice or contribution, even if you're feeling that little bit of a tug, like this life just isn't for me. Like, why am I not feeling that fulfillment? And again,
Yeah.
it's all about, at the end of the day, being able to go to bed at night and say, I know my work matters. I know my
Yeah.
life means something. And I really feel like I'm doing what I'm meant to do, is really going through and, again, just asking yourself in all of these situations. I'll give you an example.
Okay.
when so if I was at work, let's just say in my old job, and they had asked me to take on a project,
Yeah.
they would often come to me and say, we would love for you to take on this project. You're just so good at it. We know that we can always depend on you. And you're just one of those people, you're kind of our go-to, and we don't know what we would do without you. If there's a situation like that, you know that you're operating from sacrifice. Because when you're getting validation from everyone else on whether or not you're doing things right,
Yeah.
it's sacrifice.
Okay.
So I don't have, and you can go through and think of scenarios in your own life like that, but that gives you a daily reflection. And that's not to say that, again, that you have to be mean to those people and say, I'm never going to help you with anything ever again. But to step back and say, I really don't have time for that right now. And if they choose to be upset about that, you have to release yourself from the outcome. Because you deserve, as a human being, to know that your work is meaningful. And, you have to respect yourself enough to say, I know what my limits are. I don't have the energy. And I feel like I've got other things that I really need to focus on right now. Again, if they're not going to be happy with that, or they're going to punish you through that, or we're never going to ask you to do anything ever again. Okay.
Yeah, of course.
But going through different scenarios in your life and looking at that, if you're saying yes out of validation or permission from them, then you're sacrifice mode.
Yeah.
And as you continue to live that way, you will eventually reach full-on burnout. And a lot of times that ends with, midlife crisis or just a full-on mental breakdown.
Yeah.
And then you're wondering where you go from here. So being able to switch that early is ideal.
Yeah, that's great. And I know that I've been guilty of that in the past on many, many occasions.
Me too.
So I can really relate to that. And one of the things that I was often thinking about was this idea of being assertive or lacking assertiveness. And I recall reading, there was a book, I can't remember what name it was, but it was on this whole topic of assertiveness. And it really covered what you were just been talking about. And as you say, if other people don't appreciate that, they're not really worth it in the first place, because you should have the right within your own means to say no, because you don't feel that you can. You have that the energy or the mindset of that moment. That's you. You have that privilege to do that, as long as you are, as you say, trying to serve as much as possible wherever you possibly can for the right reasons. So that's really good that you say that. Thank you for sharing that. There was something which I have to ask you about. That is purely, totally hardcore. You have completed a 30-day outdoor cold plunge challenge. I mean, what the heck?
Yeah.
Well, that's crazy. I mean, I was swimming today in the sea. I have to say, I went out for 3 minutes in the sea here, but I would say that was pretty hard. But a outdoor cold plunge challenge for 30 days in a row, that's just crazy. So, what did that teach you? And what possessed you to do that in the first place?
Man, well, my husband really convinced me,
I
think, to do it. Was one big thing that I just, he said, just give it a try. And it was one of those almost just a mental challenge things, because, as it happened kind of in the midst of, my job was over. Yeah. I wasn't really making much money. I kind of felt defeated. Like, I know I'm not meant to be just, clocking in and out somewhere, and I need a job that fulfills me, but I was looking for direction.
Okay.
And I felt like being able to do something where I really had to push through my kind of mental capabilities,
Right.
was something that was needed. My husband said, why don't we start doing cold plunges? And it
Good.
was, 30 degrees outside or lower. And we're in ice, having to break the ice every day. And we actually came across someone on social media who was on like their 500th day in a row or something. And I was like, we can do 30 days. We can make it through 30 days. It'll be fine. So, but then it was one of those things too that as I was going on my self-discovery journey, I kind of shifting from sacrifice to contribution myself. I felt myself getting kind of just self-conscious of what other people would think when I told them that I didn't have a job, when all of a sudden, we went from living a certain type of lifestyle to having to majorly decrease that.
Yeah.
And it was a way I recorded it and put it on social media, with just a little bit of motivation mixed in with all of it. And it was really a way for me, and kind of a therapy for me, just to be like, no one cares what I'm doing. No one's paying attention to you.
Okay.
Nobody, I could say whatever I needed to say. I could get in the cold plunge, and I could get out, and I would realize like the world didn't end. I sat here and I talked on social media and I posted it. So it was just it was really a way for me to kind of do that therapy and a little bit of that work on my own, of not caring what everybody else thought.
Oh, that's brilliant.
And that's a huge part of alignment.
Yeah.
Is building the life that you're proud of, living the life that you're meant to live. Because it was astounding to me. One of my mentors, had kind of framed it in the sense that, when you think about people on their deathbed at the end of their life, or, whatever point in life that is, their greatest regret is not about what they bought or the car that they didn't drive or the vacation that they didn't take. Their number one regret is that they wasted their potential, that they could have made so much more out of life than what they did.
Absolutely.
And I didn't want to be one of those people.
Yeah,
so
great.
It was like, at any cost, I've got to start living in a way that makes me happy, and not caring about what anybody else thinks.
That's a really, really powerful message, honestly, and something which I've covered on various occasions. This whole idea of on your deathbed, what you think, and those types of regrets. So, and also I love the fact you mentioned about not caring, because I did a podcast maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago on that very topic.
Really?
And it was called Nobody Cares.
Yeah.
It really covered that. It was one of my solo episodes.
Yeah.
And I think perfect. I went into that. And that's an idea that I basically I read somewhere, I think it was in Sahil Bloom's book, but he mentioned that, so I just rehashed it. But I was, I came in on a completely different angle, and it really worked, I think. And it's so true. People don't care.
It is.
Everybody
else
they
is
do
worried
is
about
they
themselves.
Care about, so exactly. They just care about what they're going to do next themselves. What they're going to have for lunch, and they don't really care. So we need to remember that. That's brilliant. Great. And also admirable as well. I'm so impressed. It's something which I would love to strive towards. My yoga teacher, she showed a video of herself doing that a while ago, and I was like, wow, she got into this tank and went fully submersed herself. I was like, gosh, that is hardcore. Well done.
It's rough. It gets easier. I will tell you, it gets easier. It never gets more enjoyable. Ever.
No. Right.
At least
never gets done.
At least I don't think so. But it does get a little bit easier each time.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, it does. It's the same with the sea here. We go in two times a week, and people think we're mad, absolutely bonkers. But we do it. During the winter, all of the months, twice a week.
Oh,
and
good for you.
What are you doing? You nutcases.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Call me what you want.
Anyway, great. And I have one curveball question for you. And if your teenage self could interview you today, what surprising or tough question do you think she'd ask? And how would you answer the question, your teenage self?
Yeah. I mean, I think if I could go back now, I think she'd be kind of mad at me at first.
Okay.
If she saw, I guess, just how long I kind of dimmed who I was for the sake of other people.
Yeah.
And I think, at the same time, I feel like I could come back and tell her, like, I didn't dim myself. Really, I just completely disconnected. I disconnected from who I was. Again, for the sake of other people. But I just didn't. I took who I knew I could be. And at a young age, I knew I wanted to do something big with my life. And I didn't know how to make that happen. And again, as I just heard from other people, like, she's so quiet and all of these things. Would any of them ever think that I would be making my career as a speaker? Absolutely not. But I have a lot to say, and I have a huge heart for other people, and I want to be who I needed when I was her age.
Yeah.
Like, who, I want to be that person that goes to the high school kids and says, don't listen to everybody else. But it's easy to do unless you learn yourself, unless you learn who you are. Take every experience as it comes, take the lessons, take the growth. You have to know who you are. So I hope at the same time, I say, she'd probably be a little bit mad at me, but I hope at the end of the day too, that she would be proud of the fact that I stepped out of that, and kind of finally took that leap to get on my own path. So, and
I think if she were to hear you saying that now, she would entirely, comprehend and sympathize and be aware that you did the right thing, and you were going through that process of self-evaluation, but you didn't know it at the time anyway yourself, because obviously you're too young really to understand the process you're going through. But you were, working from inside, trying to guide yourself. So I think she would totally understand that. Absolutely. And on that fine note, thank you so much. I'd like to thank you for joining me on the podcast, and it's been a real pleasure to hear all your experiences and your story, and also your role and helping other people and that sense of contribution. So that's really good. Thank you, Stephanie, for joining me on the show, and I wish you well.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
All right. Goodbye for now.
Bye. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. Cheers. Bye. Great stuff. If there's one idea to take away from today's conversation, it's this. Stress isn't always a sign that we need to slow down. Sometimes it's a signal that we're out of alignment. And Stephanie's reminder to move from sacrifice to contribution invites us to pause, reflect, and ask a more honest question. Am I living and working in a way that reflects who I actually am? Thank you for listening to Busy Pro Fast Wellness. Until next time, take a moment to reconnect with what actually energizes you, and take good care of yourself. Goodbye for now.